we're all here. Sage had the suggestion that we, at least if we want to, introduce ourselves so everybody knows who else talking. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, and then if anybody wants to pipe in and tell us who you are and what you do, that'd be great. So I'm Cassandra Ferris. I'm the community manager here at SaltStack. Been here about 5 months now, and working on a lot of different initiatives to help kind of collaboration and communication between the community and our core internal team.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to introduce everybody, but I thought maybe we'd start, and then as we go, we could each introduce ourselves as we talk.
Oh, that makes sense.
Don't want to take up too much time.
No. All right. We are very much iterating on everything right now. So cool. So we have a bunch of stuff to cover on the agenda. A couple quick kind of just items, updates, announcements. So we did have our first virtual meetup last night. We had that at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, which is in the evening hours here in the US. Tyler Johnson did a talk on extending pop with grains. He is going to be repeating that same talk next week. And then the following week's meetup is actually going to be a meetup for our German audience. And I think the presentation will be in German. So that's one of the cool things about these virtual meetups is we have the opportunity to play with formats and to play with languages and just present to a broader audience. And all of the meetup videos are also going to be posted on YouTube. So if you missed it, that's how you can find those. We also now have a Twitch stream going on. I know this week, all week, Tyler is doing triage on the Twitch stream, and we'll probably be running through testing and other things on Twitch as well. So Twitch, we're at SaltStack Inc. And then we have the Hacks podcast. A new episode was released yesterday or the day before. So lots of different ways to find out what's going on, lots of different ways to communicate. And as always, we're open to any topic suggestions that you'd like to bring up for the open hours or for meetups or for anything else you'd like to see. Also wanted to touch a little bit on working groups because we talk a lot about working groups, but I'm not sure if everybody really knows what they are. But what the working groups are kind of dedicated groups of people who are working on various aspects of SALT to improve them. So we have working groups for the various operating systems. We have one for cloud. Most recently got them for formulas and documentation. They all meet once or twice a month. And they're a good opportunity to collaborate with others on a project that might be interesting to you or on a problem that you're trying to solve at work. You can find the working group schedules online on the community SaltStack calendar, and then the videos of those are also posted afterwards. With the working groups, you don't have to, it's not like a lifelong commitment. You're welcome to, if you want to come in for a couple sessions of the work group or when a topic's particularly interesting, you're welcome to join whenever it's relevant to you. So that's all I had to cover as far as housekeeping items go. And I think next up is the release timeline. We are also crafting a kind of written announcement around the release timeline. But I think, Sage, are you covering that?
I guess I am. News to me, but hey, we'll wing it. So I'm Sage. I work for SaltStack. I've been with the company a little over 2 years. I am a release manager, a project manager, or a scrum master. Just to give everybody an intro, I've talked with many of you, and it's nice to see you all. So let's go over the release timeline. Let me grab that really quickly.
Yeah, I'm going to share. I have it pulled up so I can share it.
Yeah, go ahead. That'd be great.
Okay, can y'all see that?
We actually can just see your whole desktop, but it appeared and then it left.
Here?
There we go.
Okay.
So looking at our sodium release milestones, we are looking towards, oh, we're moving all over the place. Can I see that again? There we go. So we are looking towards doing feature freeze, May 11th. Those dates are a tentative, that's our projected date. That could change if we find something drastic. Of course, we hope we don't find that, and that's the date that we're marching towards. And we will communicate that out and let you know if that does change. We will be doing some release candidate prepping and then getting that out so that we can do some field testing and identifying and fixing those bugs. And then we'll start the code freeze at that start of the release candidate phase. And that is also a little bit of an adjustment on how much we find and what we find. We hope that we don't find anything and things are smooth, and we'll just march towards that June 17th date of release. And then of course that gets us just after that to then a few weeks of a code freeze that will put us to July 8th. Of course, if we need to branch during that time, we could, and there's some other options that may come into that, but that gives you a good solid time frame. Any questions about that?
Have you ever had a dog?
Okay, well, my son decided he wanted to start talking right, so I unmuted.
That's okay.
So I've been trying to work on the getting some of the the stuff that was merged and developed between 2019.2 and 2019.2.1. The PRs that need to be
ported to master. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been trying to assist with that just to get the ball rolling on that, because there's like close to 500 of those, and I'm wondering how that fits into this. If that is a priority right now, or if that's something I shouldn't,
It's a great question, Eric. And actually, you bring up a good point, and I didn't think to put something in here kind of about that, but you make a good point. And we are making great strides toward that. In fact, we're going to do an internal PR port to master code jam, where we're going to try to, our goal is 150 PRs that we're going to try to port to master during that time. That's scheduled, I think, for next week. And then we wanted to do one that's external that I don't know that we have a date for yet. And so we are looking towards those. I've started to label those as code jam. They are closed PRs that need a port to master that we're going to work on there. And that's where we're focusing. Of course, if there's some that have more priority, we'd love to weed those out. I'm not exactly sure how to do that, besides just all of them need to go.
Yeah, well, main question in regards to priority is if after the code freeze or whatever, there's going to be, if that's just going to create more work down the line, in terms of getting those merged into getting those merged into master after we've done a code freeze, and after we've done a release, are we going to is me doing a whole bunch of new PRs to master, is that going to create more work down the line, after a release, are they going to need to be all rebase and stuff like that? I'm trying to balance getting that work done with making more work down the line, whether or not that's going to be more work down the line.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. And I don't know that I have enough visibility into that. I'm Megan or
yes.
Gareth. Go ahead.
It will help us, because then we don't have to port it. So any of that work would be useful. But yes, you make up a good point that if we don't get it merged quickly, it could result into, resolve conflicts. But hopefully that's something we can help manage, and not just you, unless you're willing to help. But yes, it's not work that's going to hurt us. It's only work that's going to help us.
For sure. And just, I think maybe to the point you made about, I guess, concerns on more work down the road. As far as I'm aware, we don't really have any large refactoring coming up. The big thing that we did recently was with the salt or the black refactor. So there's nothing like that planned that I'm aware of anyways. And I think
there is PyTest.
That is true.
Not like black test, but.
Yeah, I was going to say, but that shouldn't affect most things aside from just importing PyTest, kind of, unless there's unit test specific idioms that are done. But even that, really, this shouldn't be a big problem. But that is a good point. We are planning to get those PyTest changes merged as soon as they're ready. And so there will possibly be some conflicts there to be aware of, but that's probably the only real issue to be concerned about. Other than that, it should be relatively straightforward. Hopefully, hopefully we don't see a lot of merge conflicts, but you know, that's still kind of a fingers crossed thing. Just depends on where the changes are happening, and what other changes are happening in those places as well.
Yeah, and if you're looking for something that like what we want to get back into master, we have the project board that's linked off of the repo, the SaltStack repo. Any of those PRs in the column Porta Master are ones that we want to make sure get into the master branch. We understandably they're not all going to get in before Sodium, but as many of them as we can would be awesome, and much appreciated. And I think the count is now, like, it's just under 400. So as Sage said, we're going to try and tackle internally about 150. So that leaves 150 or so, or 200 or so, for anyone in the community that wants to pitch in and help. So if you see one that you had previously done, yeah, please definitely help us get those into master.
Yeah, well, I've seen some people, I mean, some of the ones that I've been doing have just been like people coming into the community site saying, hey, I opened this PR a year ago, it got merged in, but it never made it into 3,000 or whatever, you know, and most of it has been me just doing it just because, hey, you know, just asking them to redo that when I already have the, you know, get up in front of me and I can get that moving.
Yeah.
You know, those are the ones I've mainly been tackling.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate my comment from one of the last office hours. Like our original count for PRs was at 900 and something, and so through a lot of community effort, that number has dropped significantly. So greatly appreciate the patience that people have had during this, as well as the effort and help that they put into it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to everybody that's on here and everybody who has helped us through that. That is, that's an amazing feat, and we cannot do it without you.
And we did set up today's open hour to have PRs kind of be the main topic. And if we have time, we can even kind of start going through a board to see what we've merged down and
Sure.
talk about related questions as well. So this is definitely something that we're making progress on and identifying areas to do this more efficiently. So.
Yeah, and with that, this view here, I realized that we have not, and this is something that Cassandra and I have been working very diligently on, but we probably have not, that's probably not visible to the community, and we want to make that more visible, and we want to communicate more freely. We will be putting this out in all the forms of the communication, this visual for the Sodium release. We'll also make this available in a very visual spot that's open to everybody. I think we're going to put it on a blog post right now, and then we'll repost that again, and looking to make one source of truth for all these announcements as we go forward. That's still in the works, but we're going to try to do better there and make sure that people have that available to them so that they can see this and they can understand this more freely, and hope that that helps people with the communication and dates.
Yes, I've been compiling a list of preferred communication outlets, of how people are getting their information, and of the types of things we need to communicate, and putting processes in place. This is my big task for this release, is putting processes in place for our events that we're doing, as well as for publication of news, release items, those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And so we'll eventually have this all in a smooth process. So you'll be able to find things, be able to find the information you need, and understand kind of the cadence and the timeline for things like YouTube videos to be uploaded, as well as the timeline for PRs being addressed.
That's all from me about the project board.
All right, well, we'll revisit that at the end. Megan is going to chat a little bit about Town Crier and changelog.
Yeah, so to go all the way back as to the reason why I'm talking about Town Crier, there was a set put in actually by Mike Place to make the changelog a little bit more human readable. Because previously what our dot releases changelog looked like was just a list of PRs with all their commits and the issue tied to it. And so it was just this really long file that really was hard to parse, and information that you could just get from GitLog. And so we're trying to find a solution to make it more human readable. We added the changelog.md, but we haven't been doing a great job at enforcing people to edit that. And then when we do, it results in a lot of merge conflicts. And then also, because we're not forcing people to update it, we end up doing it manually before release, which is, as you can understand, a painful process. And so we're trying to find a way to ensure that we can automatically update this changelog. So one approach that I was looking into is a tool called Towncrier. And what it would require is for a user, if they're fixing a bug fix or a feature, they would need to add a file into a directory. I called it changelog. And let me post. So I just posted a couple links there. The first one is my pull request that actually implements Towncrier. If you want to take a look at that. So the user would just create a single file in that directory, and then come release time, Towncrier compiles all of those files together and makes the release file itself. So that would require every contributor adding a file. So there is that burden, added burden on them. And so Mike actually brought up another approach, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, when I describe it, but it's called conventional commits. And essentially we land on a standard on what our commits should look like. And that commit would be human readable. It would include whether it's a bug fix or a feature. And then we can use a tool that's already existent or create a new tool that will parse those commits and make it pretty into a changelog format. And so I wanted to bring up the conversation of which tool we kind of, or which approach we kind of want to go towards using. And then after that, we'll probably have to discuss how we're going to implement that, because it's going to, one, put a burden on contributors. So maybe burden's not the right word, but an added step. So we need to make sure it's documented and thoroughly, and we educate everybody. And then two, how do we implement this with the current backlog of PRs we have? So it might be a slow process or one that is implemented later. Did I sum that up right, Mike?
Yeah, no, that seems generally correct. I think that the first thing to say about that is those sound like two different phases to me. I think that it may be worthwhile to have two separate discussions, right? One about how do we handle sort of out of band changelog messages, right, that aren't directly related to an individual PR. Examples of that would be messages that span multiple pull requests, things of that nature. I think there's a second discussion that probably needs to happen around how to communicate deprecations. I'd like to bring people's attention to the way that PyTest does this. I'll go ahead and paste a link here into the chat. I think an approach like that, that is potentially ancillary to the changelog file that's generated could be really beneficial, especially given the single branch strategy that the project has adopted. And then I think third is a discussion around either conventional commits or something approximating conventional commits, which would be a discussion that is, how do we take individual PRs and group them in such a way that a person can easily understand the full set of changes. Some of the things that I like about the conventional commit standard, for example, is that it would allow us to easily identify subsystems of SALT and then correlate those subsystems with the type of change. So for example, you might imagine that a conventional commit message for a breaking change in pillar might say bug fix, breaking change, open paren, close paren, pillar. And so using a standard like that, I think it would be very, very easy to group those changes together. The last thing that I like about that is that, of course, it enables a wide variety of automation for the project, well beyond something like changelog automation. So with that, Megan, I'll turn it back to you to run that discussion however you see fit.
And
Okay.
I actually have one thing I wanted to add about that real quick that I can look into. It was, well, one thing with that was we want to make sure that people would be able to to sort of encourage compliance. And it would be nice to see if there's a way through the git config where you could specify a template commit edit message file that would pre-fill in some of those things, and then you just have to add in your own comments along those lines. I can look into what how something like that would work, and how that could be integrated into something like a recommended change that you can make to your git config to make compliance easier.
Yeah, when I did research on this, I just looked at it this morning, but it looks like there are some tools that might do that. I'm not sure
Okay.
about.
Cool.
Submit the
I'll see what I can find.
Sure. But yeah, the one thing I did want to discuss with everyone is what approach do they prefer? Do we want to go the route of conventional commits or the town crier? So that's kind of the discussion I want to make sure we have first.
So, hello, my name is Pedro. I'm one of the core developers on the SALT team. And on this topic, while I do like the approach of the conventional commits, because then we just need to parse something and we don't force anyone to do anything else, that does mean that the messages need to obey to that format. If you want to get something out of the commits to get into the change log, that means that we have to teach users how to do those. As Eric mentioned, we can probably automate that with pre-commit, but only recently we introduced Black, which forces people, to use pre-commit, or they'll get a failed build. And I've saw at least one person saying, look, I'm just fixing this, I won't run pre-commit. I will not be installing because I don't do any more, I don't do anything else with pre-commit, so I won't do it. And if we find one, we can probably find a few more, and we will have to get back to them and say, okay, can you please rebase and change your commit to this format? And that's going into Git internals for some people, so that might make it harder. But I do like the parsable approach.
I was talking to a community member, and they said that they're using it. I don't know how to pronounce his GitHub name, Mai or something like that. But he was saying that he uses this on the SALT formulas, and he will actually squash and merge and also update the commit message for the user if they're not following it. So that could be an approach we take.
Imran, you're on.
Yeah, I'm here. What happened is, as I said in one of the open hours a few weeks back, we were trying to get the formulas ready to be used with SPM, and that was including modifying the formula file so that it would be updated with the latest version. So when we were looking around, we found semantic release, which is a node, an NPM that you can install, which uses conventional commits as its backend. So we've been running that. If I can just show you a link, this is an example of a changelog that you get out of it. It's all automated from the commit messages. And yeah, the problem with contributors, we run a commit lint in Travis as well. So that shows if there's any violations from a commit angle, it gives a full description of what needs to be changed. But at the end of the day, the maintainer can always override the commit message from the GitHub UI by just selecting squash and merge and then adjusting the commit message accordingly to the format that everyone's used to, as in within the team itself. And what will happen is that will override the commit messages from the contributors. So you can get around it using some of the software that's already available. I can explain further if you need to. Yeah.
Does that resolve your concern, Pedro?
That will add another set of tasks for anyone merging pull requests.
Yes.
And that's why for a project this big, it sounds like it's a lot for someone merging this, unless we can find a way to mitigate that and turn the responsibility on the user. But
sorry, you got both.
Yeah, it's hard.
Pedro, you got both. You can either insist that the contributors do it, because the commit link is actually available to them and they can see all the messages about their commit messages and how they're appropriate or not, or the maintainer can do it at the point of merge, where they can override the commit message. Okay, they're squashing all the commits into one, but then they're overriding it with whatever message and any other release notes they want to add into the commit body. And as I just checked today, I gave the link in the developer room. You can change the output from this. You know, it's a handlebars template file. You can output it to whatever you'd like. So if the team knew a standard format to use, they could override at the point of squashing and merging, and it would be fairly, I don't think it's as hard as it sounds, because I've been doing it now for a while. It's quite simple. Actually, it's very simple.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in too and say that speaking of some of the automation that could be glued to this, you could imagine, for example, if we adhere to the standard, we could also build in GitHub automation so that, for example, if we knew that a commit was affecting the pillar subsystem, pillar labels could be applied at the point that either the commit message is made or merged or whatever. But that also gives us a very simple way to say, okay, now give me a definitive list of all pillar changes between tag X and Y, which I think is potentially very valuable for people.
Anything to add?
I'm not
Pedro?
against it. I'm not against it. I'm just honestly, because we do have a big community and a small developer team, and right now we are the only ones merging pull requests. We want to automate the most things we can so that we can free our time for bug fixes and developer work and feature work and things like that, and fix even our internal processes. And if this imposes one more task for the core developer when emerging, but again, as Imran mentioned, this can probably be automated, so it's now even. The thing I can say about Tone Crier, and the first time that I've seen it and used it was with PyTest and when contributing to PyTest, and that actually forces the contributor to provide a file which will be properly formatted when rendering the changelog. So he will be responsible for the message about the feature work or the bug fix that he did. And since it's a file and it's not in the commit message, if we need to, we can say, look, can you please reword this in this manner or that manner? And it doesn't involve too many Git internal commands or stuff like that. But again, one way it's easy to automate the commit message, and we can even block if the commit message is not the best one. On the other hand, we have the formatting of Tone Crier, and in the end, we merge everything. So I guess right now it's seeing which ones would be easier for us and the community.
also add that one thing I did note as maybe a downside to the using a standard commit message is if you want to add more detail to your fix, it would be more applicable to use town crier because you can add more info there. Unless you want to add it to a big long commit message. So maybe that's a downfall. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's not either or, right? Because, I mean, even with Town Crier, to the best of my recollection, you can extend it. So you could still have the ability to include Town Crier documents or snippets, I forget what language they use, and then append to that a set of automatically generated changelog entries, whether they're from conventional commit, automation, or what have you. But the point is that there's no need for them to be mutually exclusive. We can do both.
Okay. Looks like you're about to say something, Wayne.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I was,
okay.
I was just processing and thinking, but no, I guess I'm disinclined to do both simply because having both makes it a little bit harder to understand exactly, should I be putting it here or there or both, and having one, and preferably one obvious way to do it, feels like it would be less burden for everybody involved. And I do really agree with that concern that's been raised around, you know, if you need to rewrite the message in the git commit message, it's not necessarily as simple as, you know, just changing a file and sticking a new commit in there. I mean, I'm totally comfortable with rewriting my Git history willy-nilly, but it's definitely not, I think, as common as just editing a file and pushing a new commit. So I think that's a drawback, and for me, that that kind of makes me feel like Town Crier is probably the better way to go, just based on that fact. Now, we could automate a lot of the stuff with the git commit messages, and we could provide documentation for how to, you know, do rewriting history and things, which, you know, I think would alleviate some of those concerns. But if it doesn't bias a whole lot over just using Town Crier, I don't know if it's worth going down that path.
So who suggested to use both? Maybe I didn't follow that. I guess
Mike.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, said that it was.
I guess we could
It's not necessarily mutually exclusive. We could use both.
Sure.
Which, you know, is true, but I think one or the other is better to just pick one and go with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we should just choose one for now. Any other thoughts from the core team? Or anybody else?
I'm always a fan of having one way to do things. As soon as you introduce multiple ways, it just leads to confusion and things getting done incorrectly.
Yeah, I would tend to agree on that. I think this is one area where like a standard way of doing it is definitely a benefit over multiple ways.
Do you have any opinions on which route, Gareth?
I mean, I haven't dived too much into it, but I like the concept. I like what I've seen so far, just reading your PR, and then some other stuff about how town crier works. That seems to be a good approach. It seems to kind of go along with our approach, the approach that we take in different areas. So yeah, I think that should be that's a good direction for us to go in right now.
Mike or Imran, are you okay going? Like, are you completely against the town crier approach? I know that you prefer the commit message.
Sorry, were you asking me?
Yeah. Sorry, did I not pronounce your name correctly?
No, it's fine. Imran, that's right.
Okay.
I haven't really checked Town Crier, but what I did understand of it is that place is that the contributors that will have to do a bit more in the sense of actually provide the files or something. I didn't understand or I haven't looked into it carefully enough. Could you just explain how it works?
Yeah, so they would just have to create a file. Right now I created a directory called changelog. They would just add a file. It would be, the file format name would be the issue number that they're fixing, and then dot, and then what it is. So the type, so added, it follows along, keep it changelogs, types, added, removed, and so forth. And that's all they would have to do. But yes, they would have to add a file and add summary to what they're fixing.
Sure. I mean, ultimately, the core team needs to look at it from their angle because they're the ones who have to maintain all of this. One thing I have just found, like I said, we use CommitLint from Travis, but you can actually have it locally installed and check your commits before you even, as in you can put it as a pre-commit as a hook. So it can alleviate some of the burden, again, from the core team if people are using this locally to check their commits if they're going to use that option. So there are, ultimately it's you guys, but I'm just saying from our side as a formulas org, across 70 repos now, we're finding it's, it's taking all the burden off us. We're not thinking about anything. The commit messages do all the talking. And if you can include the commit body into the actual changelog, then, because I have not done that, but I found out you can do that. Then you've actually got your summaries of each PR as well that can go into the changelog. And it's just something worth considering because it kind of just automates everything because you're writing commit messages anyway.
I think it's worth thinking about this problem from the perspective of the person who's consuming the changelog as well. A person may be consuming the changelog and trying to understand whether or not something has changed in relation to some sort of behavior that they're seeing. It may be 6 of one and half a dozen of another if there are a small number of entries, but if they're large and effectively free-form, that may become more challenging for a person to try to reason about.
Okay.
I like the simplicity of the commit message, and the fact that if somebody didn't put the file there, I can go in and squash and make a final commit and put the release notes or whatever in, and not have to ask them to go in and add another file somewhere, rather than another system we got to maintain, another dependency.
I think the reason why I'm kind of leaning towards the town crier method here is the opposite of that approach. I mean, I think of some of my commit messages when it gets down to like the end of like when I'm just frustrated by stuff, and it's just like I wouldn't want to have to go back and read that commit message and as a basis for the change versus like a change log. I think of a change log message. It's like you're putting the thought into, okay, what actually changed here? It's after the fact, after you've finished your development, you've got it working, and you want to describe for future people, like this is what this change does. And so it just, I don't know, it forces you to like just put a little more thought into it. And as I'm saying this, I can hear and people think I can hear people's reactions, and see on Mike's face like his thought here, like, Gareth, you should make your commit messages better. And so, yeah, I can definitely see both sides of the issue here, but I'm still leaning towards town crier.
So one thing that I brought up when I started talking initially was the way that PyTest and potentially other projects, but specifically PyTest, has broken out deprecations into a separate notice. And the reason that I think that's important is that, again, if you think of the perspective of somebody who's reading a changelog, they're most likely principally interested in deprecations. What is going to break for me as a result of installing this release? If we considered moving deprecations into a separate document, and certainly linking to that document from any type of automated changelog, we could get into a scenario where, okay, look, here's one document that you go to specifically to understand what deprecations are going to be involved in this release. And here's another document, which is what you might call more of a traditional changelog, i.e. a log, if you will, of the changes for the release line by line by line. For those who didn't see, I posted the link earlier in the Zoom chat to the way that PyTest has approached this problem.
I'll have to take a look at that a little bit more carefully. Okay, I also realized that one of our team core members isn't here as well, Diwaz, who does a lot of the merging. So I think it'll be good to bring him up to board and see what he thinks, but I don't want to take up too much more time. So we'll try to, I'll bring Diwaz up to speed, and then I'll post in the develop channel and we can talk there and move the discussion there. Or in the next open office hours.
Yep. We could also experiment with Zoom has breakout room capability. And so either now or after the Zoom meeting, we can always put together a breakout room if people want to continue that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think that Diwaz is he's just out today and busy. We do want to bring him up to speed and make sure that he's a part of that conversation. So it may be better to do it later, just slightly, maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday.
Okay. All right,
Yeah,
so
we'll do that.
Yeah.
So we'll revisit this conversation then.
We'll do it next week, and then I'll also like update the Slack.
Okay, cool.
If I am able to talk to him before next meeting.
Sounds good.
We did have a community request. So on that community forum that I have, or that open hour topic submission form that I have, somebody had actually put in a question there, and they just wanted to know, consult at a high level roadmap documentation page, like which big features to expect from the next major release. And that's something we can do. I just wanted to let you know that I am monitoring kind of as those questions come in through that, on that form throughout the week. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, I will drop a link to the open hour topic submission form in chat as well.
Yeah, and were we going to go over sort of Sodium MVPs? Wayne, were you going to kind of go over where we are?
Yep, I want to touch on the IRC bridge real quick, and then we'll
go ahead.
MVPs. So Wayne?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't introduce myself earlier. Many of you know me, many of you do not, but I'm Wayne Werner, one of the SALT core developers. Recently, Slack has decided they're going to stop supporting their legacy tokens, which is how our current IRC bridge works from the community Slack to IRC. So that's scheduled to drop support in the next month or so. And so we've been looking at alternatives to that, and Imran has been helping out with that, and we've had another community member step up. I think John is his name, and really kind of try to put together a new approach. And we've set up with Matrix, a bridge that seems to work somewhat well so far. to bridge not just between IRC and Slack, but it can also bridge to the Gitter room as well. So that makes it possible to link all 3 of those communities in one. There's been some interesting things with delays of messages, sometimes taking up to like 10 seconds or so to make it across the bridge. So there's some things we're still looking at there, but we have successfully been able to communicate between Slack, IRC, and Gitter all in one. So that's some super cool news there.
That's awesome. It's a great little project too that just lets people be able to communicate more effectively. And I'm excited, thanks to the community members especially who stepped up to help out with that.
Yeah, they've been super awesome.
Yeah, man, thank you.
Okay.
And then did you want me to talk about some of the MVPs?
Yes.
So I guess 2 of the biggest features that that we're looking to get into Sodium is the fix for Tornado, and getting that upgraded to take advantage of Tornado 5 Plus. DWAS has been working through that. I'm not sure exactly how far he is on that, and again, he's kind of out of office today, so can't ping him for an update, but I know he's been making some good progress there. I know Gareth has been working on Delta Proxy, which will improve some of our proxy performance and allow using a lot more proxies with less infrastructure. And then we kind of talked a little bit about some of these other big items that aren't necessarily in SALT itself, but just supporting items. So Cassandra mentioned the timelines and the roadmap and getting that published into a nice easily digestible form, and a place where we can all find that without having to jump through too many hoops. We are also looking again at a lot of the PRs. We're planning that the internal port jam to just kind of make sure we've got a good handle on things, as well as get a lot of the progress done, and then one involving the community as well. Then we are also looking strongly at different approaches to speed up our test times, because we know that's one of the big challenges, both internally and externally. Just everywhere in the community, the long running tests, that's a big challenge. Just some interesting information there. I shared this in our test working group, the last testing working group, and I went through, and Jenkins has a list of all the test times, each of the tests and how long it took to run them. I went through and I looked at the test time, individual test times, and tried to see, okay, what's the breakdown there? It turns out that of all of the about 9,000 or 10,000 tests that run on each platform per PR, out of those, about 80 to 90% of those run in under a second. And so our slowest tests are really just about 10% of the test framework. And then if you look at how much time those 7,000 to 8,000 tests take, it ends out only taking about 5 to 10 minutes to run all of those tests. There's some other parts of the pipeline that introduce some more time, but generally speaking, we can get a substantial amount of our tests with much less time. So we're looking at a lot of that, looking at that closely to see what we can do to improve not just the test times, but the reliability of SALT as a whole. We have brought this up a few different times, a few different places. You know, we test because we want to ship the most stable, bug-free version of Salt that we can. And so when we write tests and we ask for tests on pull requests, that's what we're asking for, is how can we best guarantee that in the future when we're making changes, we don't introduce problems further down the road. How can we protect ourselves against that? And so by running tests on pull requests, that helps there a lot. And if we can run faster tests on pull requests, that could be a very good thing. But just wanted to, I guess, give you guys an update on that. That's something that we're looking at. So we should see some changes soon around that would might help a lot with our pull requests and being able to merge those faster. I think that's it for me.
Okay. We only have a couple minutes left because we have documentation work group coming up here in a few minutes, but are there any kind of questions or discussions anybody has? And I do think we should revisit this PR timeline discussion next week as well. So we'll put that up for the agenda next week so people can talk about maybe specific PRs that you wanted to have addressed, as well as give you another status update.
I have a quick question. I think I heard you say earlier that you were going to post the roadmap somewhere. Where is that going to be posted?
Initially, it's going to be posted all the places. So I'll put it up. I'll put up. Oh, go on.
Is one of those places in GitHub?
Yes.
Okay.
It's we'll try to direct everybody to those places. If there's a place that you expect to see it, it'd be great to know that. Right now I've been putting things on the wiki, and I plan to put that, or Cassandra and I will put that on the community wiki. So it's the repo that's saltstack/community/wiki, right? Or -wiki, whatever it is, and put that visual there. We're also going to try to get that visual in all the other channels and post it to Slack as well as IRC, because I think we haven't been getting that in enough places, and we don't have a central sort of source of truth just yet. And we'll look to narrow that as we go along. But right now I have to have that in several places. Go ahead.
I was saying, one potential place that would give it pretty good visibility would be in like the Slack topic fields.
Yes, absolutely. I think that we could.
That's someplace that a lot of people see, and I don't know if it would be a single channel or multiple channels, or whatever ones that you decide. But that would be something that would be very visible for a lot of people in the community.
Great suggestion.
Yeah. In addition to that, wherever that stuff ends up landing, it may be good to link from the contributing.md file, which is in the root of the repo, and also even potentially the README.
Yeah, I was just reading in the chat from Carol that we should probably have this in the docs, and it's something that we've thought about. We have sort of a new documentation team, and they're getting involved in open and doing a lot right now. And so I'm not sure if now is the right time to put that on their plate, but we can definitely do some linking very quickly. And I'm thinking much broader, but it's a great idea. Thank you for the suggestions.
Is Recode still on?
Looks like it.
Okay. I saw that you had a question in the chat about plans to get more community members involved. So yes, we do plan to get more community members involved on helping.
Yeah, and Recode, I put my email in the Slack. It is sage@saltstack.com. I just have a few questions for you. If you want to give me some more about about what you're talking about and developing and merging, we can kind of go over that. And what I glean from that, I will probably update in our visual, or maybe even in some communication, because I think that there's sort of a lot. It's like a very broad question, so I want to make sure I'm answering it correctly.
Can you all loop me into that conversation, please? I'll drop my email down as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, thanks for joining me. I really like the conversation. It's a good discussion and good questions, and we will.
Great to see everybody here.
Yes, it's so good to see everybody here, and it's good to see questions and
Thank you all for joining.
suggestions. Yes, thank you.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
I finally make. Bye.
Pasta potato.
Tomato.